New Mexico Crime Files, a deep dive into the archives, shocking and notorious cases, the arrests and what led to them, and what happened to the suspect. Here are your hosts, Dean Staley and Jessica Garate.
Welcome to another episode of New Mexico Crime Files. I'm KRQE's Dean Staley, along with my co-anchor, Jessica Garate.
Dean, always a pleasure being here with you today.
And with you, Jess. This is one of those, and I sort of defer to you because you were here during this time and covered this closely. I mean, you were in the newsroom when this was happening, and this is one of these horrific, almost poster child DWI cases, right?
It was just awful. This was back in 2009. And you have, it made national headlines. You had this outcry from the public. You have a drunk driver who is in a crash with a group of teens who were not drinking. And in one car, there's 5 teens, and then another car behind them is following them. They're all going to a party. And so this first car gets in a crash. Four of the teens were killed. Right. One survived with horrible injuries. And the second car saw it all. And so all their friends get out, and it's just a horrific scene. I remember sitting at my desk listening to the 911 calls because it's all their friends calling.
Sure.
And it had me in tears. Like, you're hearing these young kids seeing something they should never have to see. And they're trying, they're just in disbelief. They're like, please be alive, and just trying to make sure their friends are okay. And they just know that they're not. And you can hear one kid finally saying, he's gone. There's
one of these head-on crashes where there is no hope. There's not something, it's not a matter of, can someone get here soon enough? A lot of people are killed almost immediately. And you see the wreckage to this car. And without even seeing the scene after, you just look at the wreckage and you just think, oh my goodness, thinking of being inside that car when that happened.
The drunk driver, Scott Owens, this is a guy who had been in trouble before and causes this crash. Well, we'll get to that point.
Sure.
Is accused of causing this crash on the old Las Vegas highway outside of Santa Fe. And he admits he was more than double the legal limit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then this whole case, when it unfolds in court, lots of twists and turns. And so we're going to get to all of that in this episode. All
right. Let's take a look at this first piece. This is Dave Bowman, all the way back from 2009.
Scott Owens has appeared twice in police photos. Yesterday for vehicular homicide and causing great bodily injury. 8 years ago, it was for DWI. New Mexico's DWI czar calls Owens' past part of the present investigation into the deaths of 4 young teens.
It could be that he had a long period of sobriety, as some people do, or it could be that he's even driven more carefully or driven under the radar.
Owens lives in El Dorado, 10 minutes south of Santa Fe. At the village's shopping center, today's newspapers sold out early. A store clerk tells us it's all people are talking about.
People who know the man who's been arrested, who feel bad because they think he's a nice guy.
Incredibly tragic and sad, and anger at drunk drivers.
Will he learn a lesson with this?
This afternoon, investigators questioned Owens extensively. Sources say it is the first round of questioning since yesterday morning after the crash, when deputies asked Owens to take a blood alcohol test.
In this case, that was denied, so it forced the deputy to obtain a search warrant from a district court judge to obtain a blood sample.
The results from those tests are expected to take about 2 weeks.
That wreckage is just...
Yeah.
That wreckage is devastating when
horrific
you see it.
Seeing that, yeah.
Just a horrible
night.
It
tells the story, doesn't it? Just one picture.
It really does.
You know exactly what happened there.
I find it interesting, too, that in these, New Mexico, I always think is everyone knows everyone, and especially like a town in Santa Fe where you at least had someone who knew either the drunk driver, who they called a really nice guy, mm-hmm. or one of the kids or their parents or the family. And so it really hit that area. Really, it was a very difficult time after this crash. And I did want to mention, too, one of the things that also came out is that people were really outraged because he's smiling in his mugshot.
Yeah.
You have 4 teens who have been killed, and there was some backlash on that as well towards him when this happened.
Yeah, and I don't know when it was taken, but that drunk, you don't know what his state of mind is either, because there's no question he was drinking. Mm-hmm. I mean, that comes out later where it's clear
and he
that
admits.
He was way over the limit. And you mentioned before, all these families devastated, and this one man Rose Simmons' father, I think, the one you're talking about, really becomes one of those community leaders who, in part of his, dealing with his grief and having memorials and talking about, and then also wanting to get justice for these kids. You're going to hear from him throughout this piece.
Yeah, and he was very outspoken during that time, and really was the voice for a lot of these families, and really just trying to get some justice. And we heard from him during that time. We heard outrage from the public, and then, as I mentioned too, as you heard from one of the store owners that there was also this, it was hard to be mad at the drunk driver because people knew him.
Right, and then some people probably didn't realize that he'd been arrested 8 years earlier.
Yeah.
So when you're involved in this kind of horrific accident, and then people find out you've had one previous, they say, "Oh, I didn't know you, but now I think I know you. Now I know way more about you than I did." So there's that readjusting. He's a really nice guy in the community. Now I wonder about
him. Yeah.
So when we come back, we are going to introduce you to the father of Rose Simmons, who was an important part of this case, who had lost his daughter along with her 3 friends and another who was injured in a devastating manner in this. That's when we come back.
Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of New Mexico Crime Files. We are discussing the case of drunk driver Scott Owens causing a deadly crash in northern New Mexico back in 2009.
Right. These were all Santa Fe teenagers. And I feel almost like this, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. I feel like there's a weight on this particular New Mexico Crime Files. I mean, you feel the impact of losing these young people who were not drinking that night, were out driving, were on their way to a party, were, enjoying life. And then this happened to them. A crash with a drunk driver. And let's get their names down. This is Rose Simmons, who was 15 years old. Her father, you will hear from her coming up. Alyssa Trouw, who was 16. Kate Klein, who was in the car as well, 16-year-old. And then the boy who died, Julian Martinez, who was 16 as well. And then, of course, there was another teen who was very seriously injured in this crash.
And then you had another car full who were behind them, following them to this party, that saw it all happen. Well, and so you think of those, living with that and seeing what they saw, because they were the first ones there at the crash scene and seeing their friends in the state.
How traumatic to come up on your friends and you can't help them. I mean, there are 4 kids who are basically either dead or dying when you come up on the scene, and there's nothing to be done for them. I mean, that's how bad this crash was. Just heartbreaking.
Awful. Throughout this, we heard strongly from Rose Simmons' father, who was just very outspoken, trying to get justice for these kids. And in these cases too, we really try to, a lot of times when these families are going through something like this, a lot of them don't want to talk, and we respect that. But we also want to honor them and let people remember them and see who died that night, and just being able to share their stories. And so Rose Simmons' dad was really vocal and able to tell us a little bit about his daughter and
really
getting to learn
too.
These people. Yes, he was great, and just being a voice for those kids in that car that night.
This next story you're about to hear is really a close-up look at the personal cost of this horrific crash involving a drunk driver.
Me and Rose met at church.
For a few minutes this afternoon, pictures and memories allowed Zoe Manick to forget about the pain of losing a best friend.
The first time we hung out, she came to my house and we made yellow Jell-O and we dyed each other's hair. And then we decided every time that we got together from then out, we had to make yellow Jell-O and we had to dye each other's hair.
You changed your hair color
a lot.
Yeah.
She's actually naturally blonde.
While Zoe showed us a MySpace page filled with happy memories, Rose's father spoke of his daughter's passion for the environment.
Just amazing kid all the way.
Rose would clean up parks, work to plant trees, and even remind people not to litter.
Rose was kind of a mentor to a bunch of kids. She's always been like that. Don't do that. This group of kids is amazing. This is what you hope your kids are going to do.
Committed to causes, but light of heart. That's how family and friends will remember Rose.
I don't know, we cracked up about everything. I think she's probably laughing at us a little bit.
Really tough hearing from teens about just this huge loss to that whole school.
Yeah, and as parents, you and I both have, I think, the same experience. You have, and any parent does. When you see a parent who's lost a child and you think that's the very worst thing you can absolutely think of in your own life, I mean, probably worse than losing a partner or losing a parent. I mean, losing a child is so horrific that, your heart breaks for this man Rose Simmons' father, who was wonderful. And to hear him be so articulate and centered and, not vengeful. I mean, I think he wants responsibility for the drunk driver in this case. He wants to see, and also in honor of his daughter, he wants to make sure that there's accountability, but also just shining a light on what an amazing human being she was, right? She had great friends. She seemed like she was an environmentalist. She cared about a lot of different things. So it really was just wonderful to hear from him in this story, and we hear from him throughout this whole saga.
And he really was there, and just, he always was willing to do interviews and just keep reminding people what had happened and how wonderful his daughter was. And I loved hearing that too, like that she was an environmentalist, bright kids, future ahead of them. And I like that we're able to show the public like this was more than just a name and putting a face, to the victims and what kind of people we lost. Yeah. Then I just remember back in that time, you're just like, okay, Scott Owens, he was driving drunk. He was 0.16. That's twice the legal limit. Mm-hmm. And the case, just the way the case unfolded in court was really shocking. And before that, you just thought, oh, this guy's going away.
Yeah.
You're twice the legal limit. You're in a crash. 4 kids die. You seriously injure one of them. And you can't imagine any other outcome.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's listen to the story then. This is Crystal Gutierrez, one of our finest reporters at the time and still a wonderful reporter, reporting on the outcome of the trial for this drunk driving case.
We find the defendant not guilty of homicide by vehicle as charged in count 1.
The man accused of causing a crash that killed 4 Santa Fe teens is found not guilty on all 5 counts. Scott Owens held back tears moments after the judge read the verdict. In June 2009, this is the Jeep Owens was driving. The state argued he was driving drunk in the wrong lane and caused a wrong-way crash with a car full of teens, killing 4. Avery Kaufman, who was a sober driver, survived. However, the crash happened in Owens' lane. Owens' attorney argued it didn't matter if he was drunk. He was innocent and told the jury another teen driving behind Kaufman might be to blame. He said she bumped Kaufman, spinning her into Owens' lane that night. After more than 10 hours of deliberating, the jury asked to see the bumpers on the teens' cars again. A few hours later, the judge told Owens he was a free man.
This time, Mr. Owens, based on the verdict of acquittal rendered by the jury, the court hereby discharges you.
As Owens left the courtroom, his eyes welled up with tears, a free man after 2 years behind bars. But he wasn't the only one filled with emotion. Family and friends of the teens who died buried their heads in their hands in disbelief.
It's hard to believe that they came up with a not guilty.
John Simmons' daughter, Rose, died in the crash. She was 15.
They couldn't prove that he did it without a doubt to whoever was involved in the jury, and that's fine. But without a doubt, he in fact killed those kids.
Simmons says sitting through the trial was excruciating, but hearing Owens will walk was even harder.
He's not a free man necessarily. He's free to go out in the world, but I think I don't think he's free.
Wow, what strikes me about that story, Jess, was when you're hearing from the. Well, first of all, it's shocking. We know that.
Yes.
You cannot believe that this man got off and was not, as drunk as he was, and the deaths that happened here, that the jury did not find him responsible. That's incredible. But that father, to me, is just amazing because you hear him still speaking, and I think we're hearing less and less of this these days. When someone loses a case, he still has enormous respect for the process. I mean, this is a man who's lost probably his most precious thing in his whole life, his daughter, and he's saying, to the jury, it wasn't, provable beyond a reasonable doubt, but I know what happened. Like, it's provable to me. But he's allowing the jury their opinion there, which is pretty impressive. And then he makes the comment that, he's free from going back to jail, but he's not free. So he's sort of implying that he's got to carry this his whole life, which I thought was pretty insightful.
There were some interviews with some of the jurors afterwards, and they said, it was not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. And there was a lot of fear because it had caused such an outcry in our community and throughout Santa Fe that there would be backlash against the jurors. And there was definitely some fear knowing that a lot of people were going to be angry about this verdict. And it came down to the crash reconstruction and who they believed. And so you had Scott Owens' attorney saying that, hey, even though he was drunk, he wasn't the one that crossed in to the other lane.
Mm-hmm.
It was the teens.
Yeah.
And they were trying to say that another car was trying to pass on the shoulder, which forced that car, the teen's car, into him.
Sure.
Where, of course, the other side is saying he's drunk. He comes in and hits her head on. And they had two very different, you had two different experts on there. And it's just one of those that they just couldn't get the jury to be 100% on it, even though he was drunk.
Yeah, and of course, in the world of legal defense, you don't have to prove your case. You just have to prove that what you're saying is possible, which means the other is not absolute, right?
And there was just too much doubt in this jury's when they were deliberating. So
when we come back, we're going to have remarkably, and we'll talk a little bit about whether this counted as a DWI in this case, right? Because even though Scott Owens got off, did he still go to jail, or was he still charged and convicted of DWI? And I don't think he was, right?
No.
So we'll talk more about not just this, but later this guy gets arrested for drunk driving once again.
Yeah, and you would think after all of this,
of all the people in the world, right?
Yeah.
That story when we come back. So welcome back. This edition of New Mexico Crime Files, we're dealing with 28-year-old Scott Owens, who was involved in one of the most horrific drunk driving crashes ever in New Mexico history that killed 4 teenagers in Santa Fe. He beat the charge on that. So what happens later, he beats the charge, but I think he probably has a conviction still for driving drunk that night, right? Because just adding up the number of drunk driving cases, and he spent 2 years, by the way, waiting for trial. Even though he beat the charge for those deaths, he probably got convicted of drunk driving in that case, and he'd already spent 2 years in jail, so didn't have to go back, right? So we have a man who's free now on the streets, having beaten those charges, having spent 2 years in prison, and guess what? Gets another DWI.
After all of that,
you
would think, if anything would open your eyes about drunk driving, you would have stopped.
Standing on the side of the road with 4 dead teenagers would have made you think about, wow, I should have been more present tonight, even though you weren't held criminally responsible for that. So what happens next is an arrest for a third DWI. This is our own Haley Rush.
There's no keys in the ignition. I was parked. I was sitting in the vehicle, sir.
That's Scott Owens, trying to talk his way out of a third DWI arrest.
But I have reason to believe that you were driving it.
No, I was sitting parked.
Last month, investigators say he was parked in his car near his ex-girlfriend's house. She's the one who called police that night.
My ex-boyfriend's been stalking me.
When they arrived, an officer noticed Owens was drunk. He had miniature bottles of vodka in his car, a small amount of pot, and a pipe. He also had quite the fight in him.
I was not moving. Did you guys see me moving?
He takes a sobriety test but refuses to take a breathalyzer. He's eventually put in handcuffs.
All right. Are you under arrest for DUI?
Even on the car ride to the station, he still has more to say.
Now you guys are definitely harassing me.
At the station, he's then given another chance to take a breathalyzer test. Again, he argues and refuses.
You can't make me do a test for something that I didn't do because I was not driving.
At one point, he even looks at the camera in the room and pleads his case.
There was no driving. I was completely parked. Car was not in gear.
This is the same Scott Owens who was able to walk out of this courtroom in 2011 after he was found not guilty for a 2009 deadly drunk driving crash. 4 young lives were taken. And in 2012, he was arrested again for aggravated DWI and speeding in Santa Fe. This time,
the vehicle was not on. Keys were not in the ignition.
He's sticking to his story, saying he never drank and got behind the wheel.
Okay, so Jess, this one is a little messy, and let's just be honest with the viewers here. This is a little messy. So 2001, that Scott Owens is arrested for drunk driving and convicted. 2009, he's involved in this horrific drunk driving crash that kills 4 teenagers. He's found not guilty in that case, even though it was a drunk driving case. But then in August of 2016, he does plead guilty to his third DWI. So 01, 2009, and again in 2016. Incredible pattern of drunk driving.
In this 2016 case, he was sentenced to a year in jail, but a big bulk of that, I mean, he ended up spending like a month or so
because
it was suspended under a plea agreement that he made. He went free after his sentencing hearing because he received credit for time served. He'd been on electric monitoring since being charged in February of that year of 2016. While on probation in 2017, he got arrested in Durango, Colorado for leading police on a chase and almost causing crashes. He was also arrested for DWI. He was then resentenced for violating probation on the Santa Fe DWI case and was sent to prison for 5 months to complete his sentence. And then we were just unable to find if he was convicted of the charge in Durango. So this guy has just gone on for the next decade of causing problems on the road.
And we hope that we don't see him again. We hope that Scott Owens is not a name that comes up again, and we hope if it does come up that it doesn't involve, death or injury.
Really interesting case. And this case still, to this day, is still used a lot of study on it and seeing, do we have the right policies? He did admit he was drunk that night. Should he have gotten, should there be stiffer penalties for that, even if they couldn't prove that he was the one that caused the crash? And so it's really caused a lot of debate and talk. And as you can imagine, we've also heard from the parents years later who are just upset that he keeps on down this path.
Yeah, pretty devastating. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up another New Mexico Crime Files.
It does. And this is a tough one, Jess. I just got to say this. There's just a heaviness about someone who's causing this much damage in the community and putting people at risk. And so I'm hopeful that we never hear from this human being again.
I definitely, this is one where I'll always, when you bring up Scott Owens, I mean, we cover so many cases, for decades. And this is one that I'll always remember.
Yep. All right. So we'll see you next time on New Mexico Crime Files.